I'm Geraldine Bell, and I'm one of the election judges here in Wicomico County. We've come to PAC 14 today to bring some information to you that you really need so that you can personally be involved in this year's elections. I have with me Mr. Anthony Gutierrez. He's election director here in Wicomico County, and we have already started the calendar and the schedule for this year's election activities. One of the very first things we want you to think about is, are you registered? Is your registration as a voter current for where you live now?
Absolutely.
Anthony, how does one know if one is current with one's registration as a voter in Wicomico County?
There are a variety of ways that voters can check on their registration. Probably the easiest might be to go online to the Maryland State Board of Elections website, and that's www.elections.maryland.gov. And again, they can put in some information and find out what information we have for them or if they're registered at all. Another way would be to call our office, 410-548-4830, and we can help them over the phone.
And that's really important. You wouldn't believe how frustrating it can be for a voter when they show up on election day and they've moved and we cannot find their name where they are now. Not where they used to be is what's going to show up. And that can cause a lot of frustration for voters. So it's important.
Right. That's right. And you speak from experience on that
Yes.
as a chief judge. And so we do what we can in the office to make it as positive an experience on election day for the voters to cast their ballot. So now is a very good time to check on what information we have. The next important deadline for the primary election coming up is April 5th. That's a Tuesday. And that's the deadline for voters to either register to vote or change information. It could be a name change, an address change, or a party affiliation change. And the reason why that last part is important is because in Wicomico County, for our primary election this time, only eligible Democrat and Republican voters can vote in Wicomico County. Our unaffiliated and third-party voters will have to wait until the November general election. In Worcester County next door, it's a little different situation. They have an elected school board, so some of their unaffiliated and third-party voters might be able to participate in the primary election coming up, but in Wicomico County, we don't have that yet.
Okay. So that's one thing I've seen that as a voter frustration. Another voter frustration is, where do I go to vote?
Sure.
What polling place do I use?
Sure, and that comes up to our office a lot closer to the election. So again, we do a couple of things. We send out a sample ballot prior to the start of early voting, and that sample ballot is important because on the very front, it shows a voter where their assigned election day polling place is. On the inside, obviously it gives a sample of the ballot that they're going to vote on, but it also gives the information regarding early voting if they want to participate in that. And finally, if they don't receive a sample ballot prior to the start of early voting, that in itself is an indication that there may be something amiss with the information that we have. So we certainly want them to call before they go to either early voting or election day and resolve any issues.
What would be an indication to somebody in that situation that they are not registered?
Certainly if they're a regular voter, if they just participated in the City of Salisbury election last November or the 2014 elections, then we know that they should be good to go. But if anyone has any question, again, they can go online, check it through the State Board of Elections website. They can give us a call. Or the week before early voting, we are planning on sending out sample ballots to all voters who are eligible to vote. Again, in Wicomico County, those are Democrat and Republican voters only. But if they don't get that mailing, I would say by the start of early voting, they really should be on the phone to call us and find out why they didn't get that.
Now, I mentioned before about my somewhat infamous calendar. I do not know in my head where the dates fall. Early voting will, if you don't get the sample ballot, will you still have time to register?
No, because the close of registration is April 5th,
Yeah.
and early voting starts on Thursday, April 14th.
Okay.
So again, now is the
This is
perfect
the
time.
time to do that
Right.
work.
And we are seeing more excitement with the election after the Iowa caucuses,
Oh,
the New Hampshire primary. I think we've got South Carolina and Nevada coming up
yeah.
very soon. So people are getting more and more interested. And again, now is the perfect time to call
Yeah.
so we can assist you.
Yeah, get out there early and get all of that straight so there's no question and so that you can meet the deadline.
It's a good indication if you don't get that mailing prior to early voting that there might be some problem with your registration. But unfortunately, that's going to be past the deadline of April 5th for us to do anything about it or to do much about it. So that's why we encourage persons who are wanting to participate to contact us as soon as possible. Now is a great time to do that,
Yeah.
and certainly not wait until those deadlines pass, because we do have certain federal and state laws and regulations that we can follow. There's a lot of things we can do for voters, but once a deadline passes, unfortunately, it limits the assistance that we're able to give. And that's too bad for such persons as first-time voters, because if they have a bad experience the first time they try to vote, more than likely they're not going to come back, and that's not good for the process. It's not good for any of us involved.
Yeah. But working with these people who may miss that deadline for getting registered for the primary. So you miss getting registered in time to vote in the primary. What happens? What do you do so that you can vote in the general election later in the year?
Sure. If they happen to miss those deadlines for the primary, then they can wait and submit an application to participate in the November general. Absolutely.
Okay, good. So they can still clean up their act a little bit and get that registration done after the primary, but they will have missed the first level of voting.
That's correct.
All right. That's why I was using the term save the date, because I find that with my own personal calendar, I'm working into May. And I try not to be too involved in things.
Sure, and there are
people need to pay attention because that date slips up on you before you know it. It's like,
absolutely, and there are some important dates ahead of the presidential primary in Maryland. As I mentioned, the first one is Tuesday, April 5th, the deadline to make changes to your registration or to register if you're not already on our rolls. And then Thursday, April 14th is when we start the early voting period. It lasts for 8 days. It runs through the weekend. And it's from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. and it ends the following Thursday, April 21st. And a lot more people are taking advantage of that, and we hear many comments on how much more convenient it is, how they're able to get out on the weekends, and that's becoming more and more popular.
oh, good, good, good. I know. Well, I use early voting now rather than the absentee. Especially since I don't always get to work in my polling place, my local
Exactly.
polling place.
Right.
And I want to go back to the location of where one votes because there have been some changes, and it's really important for the voter to try to pay attention to the location that you go to. I'm going to have to pay attention because I won't be working the same location this year. And it's going to be right across the street where I will be. So it's really important to pay attention to where you need to be on whatever day, especially on the election day. Early
That's right.
voting isn't, you don't have all those options, but on the election day, then you really do.
Correct. For early voting, any voter in Wicomico County can go to the Civic Center those 8 days and cast their ballot. But as you mentioned, we've got some changes for the April 26th primary election. On that election day, for example, Ward Museum, I know that's a place near and dear to your heart,
Yes.
and we thoroughly enjoy being there, but we have a scheduling conflict with a program they're putting on. So we're going to have signs set up to direct the Ward Museum voters to go directly across the street, across Shoemaker Road, to Parkside High School. Now on that side, on that entrance, is where the bus ramps are to where they go in the mornings. So that's the regular Parkside High School voting location. And we're able to combine the voting equipment to be set up to accommodate both Ward Museum voters and Parkside voters. And then in November, we're on schedule to go back to Ward Museum. Another situation arose because of the Poodle Show. So we will have early voting at the Civic Center, and as soon as we close up early voting, the poodles will be
poodles will be
moving in, and so it's not available to us on Tuesday, April 26th. And so we're going to ask those voters to go directly across the street to the Y-High Auditorium lobby. Again, we have a regular polling place at the Y-High cafeteria. So those voters will still go to the cafeteria, but we're asking the Civic Center voters for the primary election only to go directly across the street to the auditorium lobby. The sample ballot will have all that information on the front, and we're also going to do a special mailing to anyone who's had a polling place change.
Oh, good. Okay.
We're looking forward to bringing on Parsonsburg Volunteer Fire Department as a new partner, the Allen Community Center, and Community Christian Church out on Nanticoke Road. And again, those voters will have it noted in their sample ballot, but also a special mailing prior to the election. And finally, in the Beaver Run area, our board has responded to some issues which have arisen in the previous election. They made some precinct changes since 2014 in that area. So those voters in Election District 5 will get notices. And of course, again, that sample ballot is very important to check over and see where your Election Day assignment is. Once again, early voting, any voter can go there and take care of it. And once more, absentee voting is always an option.
You mentioned something while you were talking that reminded me that this year technology is marching on and we will have new voting machines.
That's right. With the April 26th primary in Maryland, we're rolling out a new statewide paper ballot-based voting system. Now, the law changed back in 2007, but that was right during the recession or at the beginning of the recession. So the funding wasn't available until Governor O'Malley's last budget. He was able to put some money in to start the process. So this coming primary is the first time we'll be using this system.
What can we expect, since some of us have had the experience of a paper ballot before in Maryland? So what is this new paper ballot? What can you tell us about that?
I think it's going to be a pretty straightforward experience. Voters are going to get a paper ballot once they finish registering in at the check-in table. And the state board has also changed the design. If you voted an absentee ballot in the past, you'll notice that there's a new, hopefully more voter-friendly design to it. And once they get that, they'll be offered a pen, but the system is designed to accept pencil or all types of pens and other marking devices. They'll look over their choices and darken the oval. There's a small oval next to each of their choices. It's very important to read each contest header because that will tell you if it's a vote for 1 or 2 or 3. There are some contests which will have multiple selections. And completely darken in the oval. Unfortunately, some voters will do check marks or X's, and possibility that it doesn't hit exactly in that middle of the oval, and the machine might possibly miss a vote because of that. So that's why we try to instruct them completely darken the oval. There are going to be contests on the back, so it's good to flip it over and make sure you look, and there's a note at the bottom to instructing voters to do that. And once you've darkened all the ovals and made all your selections, I'd recommend that they turn it back over to the front and check it one more time. Again, make sure that all those ovals are darkened, make sure you didn't accidentally skip a contest, and certainly that you didn't overvote a contest. Because the next part of the process is that you'll be directed to go over to a ballot scanning machine. Now that ballot scanner is what actually tabulates and keeps the results for us. And so they'll be instructed to slide that ballot in on the front ledge of the scanning unit. And if there's a problem with it, such as a mark that could not be read, maybe a check mark that didn't quite hit the center, or if they've overvoted a contest, then the screen will have a message instructing both the voter and the election judge that's assigned to be there that there's a problem with that ballot. So at that point, they can return it. There's a button on the screen that says return. The ballot will come out, and we call that a spoiled ballot. And unfortunately, that means that the voter is going to have to go back to another table, be reissued a second ballot, be asked to spoil that first one, it's going to take more time, more effort. And again, we're looking for the most positive voting experience for every voter. And so, again, by darkening on the ovals, checking over your ballot front and back, it helps so that when you get to the scanner, everything goes nice and smooth. Your vote is counted, or your votes are counted, and you get your I voted sticker and you're on your way.
In all the time that we've used the same machines the whole time I've been an election judge. And I started out as a helper. And sometimes a voter would come in and I'd be assigned to walk them to the machine and get them started. And they'd get my arm and they'd say, okay, you need to stay with me because I don't know how to use these things. And so there are people at the polling place there to help you. But there are some opportunities before Election Day for people to come and get familiar with this new machinery. So there are some outreach locations that have already been set up for the period before the primary. Could you mention those?
Well, we don't have locations, but we have been going out to groups in the community.
Yeah, that's what I meant. That's what I meant by locations.
Sure,
yeah,
absolutely. Churches, civic groups, and unfortunately, we're getting into an incredibly busy part of our election administration part of the election, and so we're not able to add any more to the schedule of what we've already done. But we're planning to do a lot more during the late spring and summer after we wrap up the primary election, well ahead of the November general. And basically what's going to happen when a voter goes in either to the early voting center or on election day, they will still check in at a table with the electronic poll books, and they'll be asked to give their last name, first name, month and day of birth, and because it's a primary election, they'll be asked their party affiliation. Now, when you're like me and you have a name like Gutierrez, it's very helpful sometimes, and many people do hand over a form of ID, a driver's license, etc. Again, just to help with the spelling of the last name. But the election judges, as you well know, are instructed to still ask the voter to state that out loud. And sometimes voters wonder why. They have to say it so loud, especially the party. That is required by state regulations to do so. And so that's why there's a sign on the table and the judges are asked to do that.
To do that part.
But as far as giving assistance, our elections in Wicomico County are so successful because of people just like you. We're going to use probably about 300 local citizens to put on the primary election, and even more for the November general with the higher turnout expected. And we certainly could not do it without you, and we could not be as successful without so many people giving their time and effort for such a long day. And so with the new system, yes,
5:45.
right, and into the evening, later in the evening. So we train our judges on the new system, and we'll be sending them out. And of course, if they have any questions or need any assistance from us, we're always just a phone call away.
I know. I know what it's like to. It's just gone. You go blank on something, or you don't remember something, and you can actually get on the phone and get somebody from the support team to get that answer for you, and it makes it manageable for somebody who's judging, especially a chief judge. When it seems like chief judges are supposed to know everything. And when I was first asked, I said, oh no, because I thought it seemed like I was going to have to know absolutely everything. So it was scary to
and
take
as you
that
mentioned,
on.
It is a team effort. There are probably about 9 judges per polling place. That's an average across the county, some more or less. But I think you can attest to it better than I that these teams of people, opposite parties, all walks of life, they really come together in support of our efforts to make voting as positive an experience as possible.
I knew people worked the polls. I grew up knowing people worked the polls, but I had no clue of what that meant here. I was a registered voter, but those are people that work the polls. So I went to a meeting at the Ward Museum. There was a poster about being an election judge from PACE at SU. And so I just strolled into the office and said, I wanted to sign up for this. So how do you get your election judges? you said there are many, many. I know there are lots of them because I see the room is full of people when we go to training and we're all there. So how does one become an election judge?
Simply contacting our office, either calling or stopping by, as you mentioned. And right now, I believe we're good on assignments, but there always seem to be things to come up, issues such as health or work-related matters. So there are many reasons why persons might have to drop off between now and April 26th. So we keep what we call a pending list, and we'd like to have that pending list as full as possible. And we also intend to add more judges for the higher turnout expected in November. So if anyone's interested, please, they should stop by or call and get on that pending list. We're always looking for new persons.
Yeah, I can attest to the teamwork of the judges because I had an assignment once and I showed up. We had our briefing, just with the chief judges, and within short order, I got so sick that I could not finish the workday,
Oh, no.
and I had to leave. And so whatever I was assigned to do for that day, somebody else got tapped. They either had to come in because they were on the standby list, or somebody there had to pick up whatever I was going to be doing until they worked out a solution. But I left, and voting went on, and that's a tribute to the way people work together.
Yes.
And the teams are made up of balance among parties. So, but we're all able to work for that day to get that job done, to get people in, get their vote registered, and let them get on their way.
And that's a testament to both the staff that we have in the office that does such a good job of getting a lot of dedicated people, and also a testament to the people who are willing to step up. Sometimes, as you mentioned, at the very last minute. You'd be surprised how many people, again, for a variety of reasons, unforeseen circumstances, that election morning, unfortunately, they can't make it. And so we have people on the pending and standby list that are willing to head out sometimes in the dark of the morning, very early, as you mentioned, and go ahead and step into that role.
Yeah. It's quite a team, and the logistics just amaze me every time. So is there anything else that we haven't covered that you would like to bring out?
Well, voters in Wicomico County can expect to vote on 5 contests: the presidency, the U.S. Senate seat that's being vacated due to Senator Mikulski's retirement, U.S. Congressional District 1, and for both Democrat and Republican voters, 2 contests regarding delegates to the nominating conventions, which will be held later on this summer.
I do want you voters, you potential voters, to get yourself, if you're a voter, get your schedule so you've made time to vote. I'm sure opinions are forming, but we need the action to get your participation in that process. And if you're not registered or not clear about your registration, give a call. If you use the internet, go online to find out how to get yourself registered so that you can come out and vote and participate in the running of your country.
And if there are any questions that we can answer from our office, our number is 410-548-4830.
All righty. Well, I want to thank you all for spending time with us, for watching PAC 14. I want to thank PAC 14 for the opportunity to touch the community this way. And good luck to us all. We want to see you guys out there.